The Last Chapter, a short story by Neil M. Thorne. In all my travels across this fair world, I have never witnessed anything more meaningful than a tree being cut down. I had always believed trees were protected under law, but this was no random act of vandalism, but, rather confusingly, creation. By chance, I had come across something quite unique. The order of the last chapter in their yearly pilgrimage to make paper. Of course, I did not know this at the time, and only after was it explained by one of the many who had travelled there to witness it. That enraptured crowd was what first drew my attention, but as the felling continued, I too became a part of that audience, drawn into the ceremony of those peculiar monk-like people. Upon finishing, they laid the tree down with a reverence reserved only for a fallen friend, lamenting its loss, and bowing their heads in contemplation. The calm of that moment was interrupted only by the passing of nature, freshly fallen leaves being blown away by the wind. Soon after, they cut away any excess, leaving only the core of the trunk. Each step was taken with the utmost care and respect, and I was struck by the tenderness of it all. After, the tree was lifted and carried between them to a nearby handcart, where it joined several others that must have been cut down before my arrival. Only then did the stillness amongst all those gathered break, with smiles and even good-natured laughter, as if it were finally okay to celebrate at the completion of a great and arduous challenge. Then, once having cleared away every last offering, they took the cart and continued on their way. As their entourage of eager onlookers prepared to follow, one of their number approached and, having noted my confusion, offered to explain what was going on, for which I was most grateful. This was how I came to learn of the order of the last chapter, and their mission to preserve the dying art of writing. Naturally, none of this made sense to me, for in this enlightened age there had been no need to produce paper, at least within my lifetime. As for writing, I could not figure that it was a dying art. To this, my new friend told me the purpose of the order was not about literacy, but rather the physical act of writing itself. When first coming together, still within living memory of the last great wars, the order found themselves at the start of a new technological renaissance, and were concerned that the practice of writing by hand might become forgotten. Certainly it seemed a noble cause, but I struggled to understand a point. We live in an unprecedented age of peace, where all have access to education and can both read and write to a high level. What did it matter if some archaic form of note-taking was left behind to progress? Their worry, however, was that if one day, somewhere down the long road of the future, something were to cause society to fall into darkness, then the loss of writing might permanently set back humanity's chances of recovery. He agreed how unlikely that possibility was, but the order took a more pragmatic view, and saw themselves as insurance against an end all hope will never come to pass. We still have books, though, I reasoned, and though now only accessed remotely, the originals continue to exist in numerous archives and institutions the world over. Should the end they envision ever come to pass, then it was not as if all human knowledge would be lost. How would I, my new friend put to me, be able to share the entire wealth of my education and wisdom without the technology of modern life so many take for granted? Then, when I did not respond, he asked if I could even write my name without digital assistance. My answer was of course no. Living in a time where it was no longer necessary, I had never given it any thought, and only in that instant did I come to realize how something so simple could be so fundamentally important. The purpose of the order wasn't to preserve knowledge, but instead make certain we have the means to share it should the worst ever befall us. In all truth, I had never felt so humbled, and thanked him for opening my eyes. He told me not to fret too greatly, for all those who gathered to watch, himself included, had been where I stood now. This was why they chose to come along each year to show the order their respect for the sacrifice they continue to make. I chose to join their pilgrimage, following them back to their sanctuary of writing, where, until the time comes to gather more wood, they will isolate themselves away from the world. We were not permitted to follow beyond the gates, but at that threshold lay a book, one made of real paper, in which all those who made the effort to visit were encouraged to write their names. I felt conscious about doing so, not wanting to deface such a beautifully crafted artifact, but its purpose was only to educate. My new friend flipped through the pages to show his first effort, which compared to now was barely legible. So, with uncertainty, I took the offered pen and placed its nib upon that clean, crisp paper. The mark left could barely be recognised as a name, but in that moment I had never had a more profound experience. It is something I will take forward with me in my life, although not for the benefit of anyone other than myself. Maybe one day I may return to that sanctuary high up in the hills to write my name once more and pay my respects. For only once the final chapter is read will the story truly be told. Thank you for listening, and if you have enjoyed this story, please feel free to like, comment, or even follow for more.